She stands at the kitchen counter, dinner plate in hand, watching her husband of 18 years sit at the head of the table, laughing, relaxed, cutting his steak like a man with absolutely nothing to hide. She sets the plate down slowly, pulls a folded cream envelope from her cardigan pocket, and places it flat on the table between them, without a word. He looks down at it, then up at her, and in the half second before he arranges his face into confusion, she sees it, the flash, the recognition, the guilt. She leans forward, voice dangerously quiet, eyes never leaving his. How old is he, Daniel? He opens his mouth, closes it. How old is he? He sets his fork down carefully, the slow, deliberate movement of a man buying himself seconds to construct a lie. Claire. She straightens up, arms crossed, jaw locked, voice dropping to something colder than anger. Don't you dare say my name like I'm the one who needs to calm down. The silence that follows is the loudest thing that has ever happened in that house. Her name is Claire Whitfield, and until 9 days ago, she believed she had a good life. Not a perfect life. She was too intelligent for that kind of delusion, but a solid one, a real one. 18 years of marriage to Pastor Daniel Whitfield, a man the city of Atlanta respected deeply. A sprawling home in Buckhead with high ceilings and a kitchen she had renovated twice. A congregation of nearly 2,000 people who called her Sister Claire and meant it warmly. A life that looked, from every visible angle, like the portrait of a woman who had made excellent choices. What the portrait didn't show was what Claire had quietly surrendered to build it. She had been 32 when she met Daniel, a rising litigation attorney at a prestigious downtown firm, with a mind like a steel trap and a reputation for dismantling opposing arguments with surgical calm. She was going somewhere. Everyone around her knew it. She knew it. Then, Daniel walked into a charity gala on a Friday evening in October, and something in her compass shifted. He was magnetic in the way that certain men are, not loud, not showy, but gravitational. He pursued her with patience and consistency. He remembered everything she said. He showed up. He made her feel, for the first time in her adult life, like someone was truly paying attention. 4 years into their marriage, he asked her to step back from her career. The ministry was expanding rapidly. He needed a partner beside him, visible, steady, present. Claire told herself it was temporary, a season, a sacrifice that love sometimes required. She handed over her client files, cleared her office, and stepped into a new identity. She did not know yet what that sacrifice was actually funding. But the answer had been sitting at the bottom of a leather journal inside a storage box in a closet she hadn't opened in years, waiting with the patience of a secret that knows it will eventually be found. It is a Wednesday morning when everything changes. Daniel has asked her to locate an old charitable registration document stored somewhere in his study closet. Claire is not a woman who pries. She moves through the shelves methodically until her fingers find a worn leather journal wedged beneath a stack of old ministry folders. The envelope is tucked inside the back cover. Cream-colored, slightly yellowed at the edges, unsealed. She tells herself later she doesn't know why she opened it, but something in her, some frequency she had been ignoring for months, already knew. The letter inside is dated 22 years ago, 1 year before she and Daniel ever met. It is handwritten, 2 full pages, and it is addressed to a woman named Rachel. Claire reads the first paragraph standing. She reads the second, sitting on the closet floor. By the third, she is not breathing normally. Daniel writes with a tenderness she has spent 18 years quietly waiting to receive. He writes about a love that he describes as the realest thing he has ever known. He writes about a decision that is tearing him apart, a path he is being pushed down by family pressure and circumstance and obligation. And then near the bottom of the second page, 4 sentences that detonate everything. Rachel, I know about the baby. I know you are keeping him. I need you to understand that I cannot be there, not right now, not in the way either of you deserve, but I'm asking you to name him James, so that when he is old enough and when I am free enough, I will find him. He is mine, and I have never once forgotten that. Claire reads it 3 times, then a 4th. Her hands are shaking so badly that the paper makes sound in the silence of the study. Daniel has a son named James, a son who has existed, breathing, growing, living somewhere in this world for over 22 years. A son Daniel chose to bury alongside every other truth he decided Claire did not need to know. She hears his car pull into the driveway. Claire folds the letter with steady, deliberate hands, places it back exactly where she found it, walks to the kitchen and finishes dinner. She does not say a word that evening, or the next day, or the 4 days after that. The attorney in her, the version of herself she packed into a box along with her case files 14 years ago, understands one fundamental truth about confrontation. You never show your hand before you have gathered all cards. So she waits, and she watches, and she begins to notice things she had been too trusting, too devoted, too deliberately blind to see before. The way his phone is always face down, every surface, every room. The way certain calls make him stand up and walk outside without explanation. The way he sometimes stares past her in dinner with an expression she cannot name, somewhere between nostalgia and guilt and the particular exhaustion of a man managing too many secrets at once. 9 days after she finds the letter, she places it on the table between them at dinner, and she asks him how old the boy is. He exhales slowly, not the exhale of a man caught, but the exhale of a man recalibrating, deciding how much to give away. Claire, that letter is ancient history. I was 26 years old. Rachel was someone I knew for a short time. It was complicated. I wanted Claire. I didn't ask you about Rachel. I asked you how old your son is. A long pause. He looks at the table. 21. She nods slowly, one slow nod, like a judge receiving a verdict she already knew. 21 years old. Her voice is perfectly level, which is somehow more frightening than if she had screamed. And in 18 years of marriage, you never once. He leans forward, hands out, voice shifting into the register he uses from the pulpit. Reasonable, authoritative, faintly wounded. Claire, I didn't tell you because it had nothing to do with us, with what we built. I handled it privately and I moved forward. That's what mature people do, sweetheart. She looks at him for a long, unblinking moment. Mature people. She laughs, a single, short, hollow sound. Right. What follows is worse than the confrontation itself. Daniel does not crumble. He does not beg. He deploys, with the precision of a man who has spent decades in front of audiences, every weapon in his considerable arsenal. He tells her she is being insecure, that she is allowing the enemy to use an old mistake to destabilize a blessed marriage. He reminds her carefully, pointedly, of the life he has provided, the house, the community, the security. He mentions the congregation in passing, the way a man mentions a loaded weapon he has no intention of putting down. How a pastor's family in crisis affects the entire church body, how instability ripples outward, how much people depend on their steadiness. One evening, he reaches across the kitchen table and covers her hand with his, voice low and practiced and warm. A woman of faith doesn't let one old letter rewrite 20 years of real life, sweetheart. She looks at his hand on hers. Then slowly, without a word, she moves her hand away. She almost believes him. The wife in her, the woman who rearranged her entire life around his calling, wants desperately to believe him. But the attorney in her is already building a case. Then, on a Sunday morning, 6 weeks after she found the letter, a young man walks into the church and sits in the 3rd row. He is tall, broad-shouldered. He holds himself with a quiet stillness that is immediately unnervingly familiar. And when he turns his head to look toward the front of the sanctuary, Claire sees Daniel's jawline, Daniel's eyes, Daniel's exact brow line resting on a face that cannot be more than 21 years old. Her stomach drops completely before her mind catches up. After the service, he approaches her, calm, respectful, nervous in the way that young people are nervous when they are doing something that costs them everything to decide. He stops a few feet away, hands clasped in front of him, eyes steady but full of something enormous. "Mrs. Whitfield." His voice is low, careful. "My name is James. James Carter." A pause, just long enough. "I think you know why I'm here." Claire goes absolutely still. Her face reveals nothing. Her eyes reveal everything. "I think," she says quietly, "that we should sit down." They sit in a quiet corner of the empty church hall, and James tells her everything. His mother, Rachel, raised him alone in Cincinnati. He grew up with a name his mother gave him deliberately, James, and a photograph of a man she refused to identify until he turned 18. When she finally told him the truth, he spent 3 years deciding what to do with it. He sets his phone on the seat between them, a single photograph on the screen. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, gap-toothed smile, Daniel's eyes looking directly at the camera. "She didn't come here to cause problems," he says, voice steady but tight. "And neither did I. I just needed to know if I was real to him, if I ever was." Claire looks at the photograph for a long moment. Then she looks at this young man, this careful, dignified, fatherless young man, and something inside her makes a quiet, final decision. "You are very real," she says softly, "and you deserved so much better than this." She thanks him. She stands. She straightens her blazer, and she walks out of that church for the last time. If you're enjoying this story, please give it a like and subscribe for more.
She calls her mother that same night. Not to explain, not to recount every detail in sequence, just to hear a voice that has never once required her to perform. She sits on the edge of the guest bedroom bed, the room she has quietly migrated to over the past 3 weeks, phone pressed to her ear, one hand flat on her knee, staring at nothing. Her mother picks up on the second ring. "Mom!" Her voice cracks on the single syllable, just that one word, and then she holds it together. A pause on the other end. Then, with the particular tenderness of a woman who has been waiting 18 years to say this, "Come home, baby." Claire closes her eyes, exhales, nods at no one. Okay. She's 51 years old. She has been out of law for nearly 14 years. She owns a beautiful house in Buckhead that belongs to a life she's no longer willing to inhabit. And she has exactly one suitcase packed and sitting by the guest room door. Because the attorney in hand knew, the moment James Carter sat down beside her in that church hall, that she would not be sleeping in this house much longer. She leaves on a Tuesday morning while Daniel is at a breakfast meeting with his elders. No dramatic exit, no note, no final confrontation designed to give him an opportunity to perform. She simply picks up her suitcase, takes her personal documents from the fireproof safe in the study, the same study where she found the letter that started all of this, and walks out the front door of the Buckhead house for the last time. The city of Atlanta receives her without ceremony, and that is exactly what she needs. Her mother's apartment is on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown, warm, bright, uncluttered, and full of the particular quiet that belongs to a woman who has spent decades learning the difference between peace and emptiness. Her 2 sisters, Diane and Rochelle, arrived within 48 hours. No questions, no lectures, just food on the stove, wine on the counter, and the uncomplicated presence of women who loved her before Daniel Whitfield ever learned her name. Rochelle sets a bowl of soup in front of her and sits down across the table, chin resting on her hand, voice dry but warm. We always thought he was too polished. Diane, from the couch without looking up her phone, "I said it at the wedding, nobody wanted to hear it." Claire looks between them, and for the first time in weeks, something almost like a laugh moves through her. "You are both terrible." Rochelle points her spoon. We are both right. There's a difference. It is the first moment in 6 weeks that her chest does not feel like concrete. But rebuilding, real rebuilding, is not warm soup and sisterly sarcasm. It is waking up at 51 years old and staring at a resume that stops abruptly 14 years ago, like a sentence someone abandoned mid-thought. It is walking into a legal aid volunteer orientation and being mistaken for a board member rather than an applicant. It is sitting across from a supervising attorney 15 years her junior and answering questions about her current working knowledge with the particular humility of someone who was once very good at something and is not yet sure how much of that goodness remains. It is hard in ways she did not fully anticipate. And Daniel makes it harder. He calls, persistently, then strategically. The first wave of calls is remorse, his voice low and careful and calibrated toward the version of Claire he believed still existed. She is standing in her mother's kitchen when the third call comes in, her bar review materials spread across the counter. She stares at his name on the screen for 4 seconds. Then she turns the phone face down. When the calls stop working, he begins working the periphery. Mutual friends from the congregation reach out, gently, carefully, with the particular discomfort of people who have been recruited without being told they are being recruited. Sister Patricia calls to say she is praying for them both and that marriage requires sacrifice from both parties. Elder Thompson stops by her mother's building, uninvited, to remind her that Pastor Daniel is under enormous spiritual attack and that her absence is being felt by the entire church family. A woman from the praise team sends a long message about how God hates divorce. She reads it, sets her phone down, picks up her bar review textbook, and turns to the next chapter. She does not respond to any of them. What Daniel has not yet recalculated, what he fundamentally misunderstood about the woman he married, was that Claire Whitfield was never moved by the opinions of rooms she was not in. She was moved by evidence, by facts, by the clean, unambiguous truth of what the record shows. And the record shows everything. 14 months after she walks out of the Buckhead house, Claire Whitfield passes her requalification examination. She scores in the 91st percentile. She's sitting in her car in the parking garage of the testing center when the result appears on her phone screen. She reads it once, twice. Then she leans her head back against the headrest and breathes. A long, slow, full breath, the kind her body has not been able to produce in nearly 2 years. She calls Rochelle. I passed. Screaming on the other end, genuine, undignified, beautiful screaming. Claire laughs, a real laugh, unreserved and unperformed, the laugh of a woman remembering who she is. She starts at a legal aid organization downtown, quietly, methodically, rebuilding muscle memory like an athlete returning from injury, not by pretending the time away didn't happen, but by being honest about where she is and disciplined about where she is going. Former colleagues resurface, people who remembered her name from before, people who had watched her disappear into someone else's life and quietly, patiently kept a space open. Within 2 years, she is made junior partner at a boutique firm specializing in institutional accountability. Within 3 years, she has constructed a reputation, precise, formidable, quietly devastating in a courtroom, as one of Atlanta's most sought-after attorneys in cases involving financial misconduct within religious organizations. She did not choose the specialization randomly. She chose it because she understood from the inside exactly how these institutions operated, how they used language of faith to insulate leadership from accountability, how they weaponized community loyalty to silence dissent, how they buried inconvenient truths in storage boxes at the back of closets and hoped nobody went looking. She knew it all intimately, and that intimacy made her extraordinarily dangerous. The call comes on a Thursday afternoon in the 3rd year. A group of former members of Restoration Fellowship, Daniel's congregation, or what remains of it, have retained her farm. Their concerns are specific and documented. Significant financial irregularities in the ministry's accounts spanning nearly a decade. Donor funds redirected into accounts with no charitable designation. A pattern of misappropriation so methodical it could only have been intentional. They need an attorney they can trust completely. They chose Claire Whitfield. She sits across from them in the firm's glass-walled conference room, legal pad open, pen in hand, completely still while they speak. When they finish, she looks around the table slowly. "I need you to understand something before we proceed," she says, voice measured and clear. "I have a prior relationship with the subject of this investigation. If at any point you feel that creates a conflict, you tell me and we reassign. But if you want someone who understands exactly how this ministry operated from the inside, then I am the most qualified person in this building to represent you." A pause. The group exchanges glances. Then the woman at the head of the table nods firmly. "That's exactly why we called you, Miss Whitfield." The investigation takes 11 months. Claire works it with the same cold precision she brought to every case she handled 20 years ago. Methodical, thorough, utterly without sentiment. She builds the record piece by piece. Financial statements, donor communications, internal transfers, a paper trail so comprehensive and so damning that by the time it reaches the relevant authorities, there was nowhere left for the truth to hide. The ministry loses its charitable status. The financial findings become public, covered by 2 local news stations and picked up by a national faith and culture publication that has been investigating similar patterns across the country. The congregation dissolves, and Daniel Whitfield's carefully constructed reputation, the one Claire spent 18 years standing beside and quietly upholding, comes apart in ways that no amount of pastoral charm can reassemble. He calls her once during the proceedings. She is at her desk at 7 p.m. on a Thursday when his name appears on her phone. She looks at it for a moment. Then she answers, calm, unhurried, completely herself. "Daniel." His voice is tight, the tightness of a man who is unraveling and cannot locate the correct performance for the moment. "Claire, how could you do this? After everything, how could you do this to everything we built together?" She leans back in her chair slowly, one hand resting on the desk. "I didn't do this, Daniel." Her voice is even, almost gentle. "You did, the moment you decided I was never your first choice." "And for what it's worth," she continues, quieter now, the way people speak when they are saying something they have been carrying for a long time. "You were never my first choice either. My first choice was always myself. I just forgot that for 18 years. She pauses one beat. "Don't call this number again." She ends the call, sets her phone face down on the desk, and goes back to work. Today, her name is Claire Whitfield. Not somebody's wife, not somebody's backbone, not the woman standing in the front row making someone else's vision look like a shared dream. Not a consolation, not a circumstance, not a different path. Just Claire. She is 54 years old. Her office is on the 19th floor of a building in Midtown Atlanta with a view of the skyline she once gave up everything to leave behind and then fought her way back to on her own terms. Her diplomas are back on a wall. Her name is back on a door. Her mother calls every Sunday morning and it is the best part of her week. James Carter reached out once, a short, careful email asking if she was okay. She replied with 3 sentences. She wished him well. She meant it completely. The guest room at her mother's apartment still has her old law textbooks stacked in the corner. She keeps them there on purpose, not as a reminder of how far she fell, as evidence of how deliberately she climbed back. Some mornings she stands at her office window with her coffee and looks out at the city. And she thinks about the woman who was on her knees on a closet floor, shaking over a piece of paper, trying to figure out what 18 years of her life had actually meant. She thinks about her with compassion, with respect, with the particular tenderness you reserve for someone who survived something they were never supposed to survive. And then she turns back to her desk and she gets to work. What part of Claire's story hit you the hardest? Was it the moment she found the letter or the moment she finally chose herself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. The moral. There is a version of you
that existed before you started shrinking yourself to fit someone else's life, before you traded your ambitions for their comfort, before you called sacrifice love and called silence strength. That version of you did not disappear. She waited. She was patient in the way that real things are patient, quietly, without demand, trusting that you would eventually find your way back. It is never too late to choose yourself. Not at 40, not at 50, not at any age that still has morning in it. The woman you are always meant to be has been holding your seat this entire time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone you love, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a friend who needs to hear it today, and tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from. We are building something real here, and we are so glad you are part of it.